Now, UK basketball season, of course, will get underway tomorrow night with Big Blue Madness. Some say that there could be a chance that this team repeats at a national title. One of the people saying there's a good shot of that is Gary Parrish from CBSSports.com. Very happy now to be joined by Gary on Skype. Gary, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. What's going on in Kentucky?
A lot of excitement for the basketball season to get underway, partially because of football, but we won't get into that. I know Indiana's a favorite to win the title for a lot of people. Louisville also because of the experience they return. But you wrote a thing you like Kentucky, what they have to offer. Can you talk about what you like about the Cats this season?
Well, I try not to make it too complicated. I look every year, and for the same reasons that I thought Kentucky would be the national champions last year, I would think the same thing this year. They got the best players, and that is not a foolproof formula. The teams with the best players do not always win the national championship, but 2008, Kansas had the best players. They won. 2009, Carolina had the best players. They won. Last year, Kentucky had the best players. They won. So I don't think there's anything silly about going with the team that has the best talent. Is inexperience a concern? Yeah, because I do think the obvious difference between last year's Kentucky team and this year's Kentucky team is the presence of Darius Miller, the presence of Terrence Jones, the presence of guys who have actually played significant minutes on a significant basketball team, Adron Lamb, of course, being another. This team kind of lacks that, but if anybody can get freshmen to play at a high level, Cal's proven that, first at Memphis and then, of course, at Kentucky. So if somebody wants to pick Louisville to win the national championship, there's nothing wild about that. Indiana, nothing wild about that. But I don't think there's anything crazy about picking Kentucky either, given that you look at pure basketball talent, NBA talent, nobody in the country can match their roster.
You talk about Cal at Memphis. I know you were close to him a lot when he was at Memphis covering that team. Has anything changed with him at Kentucky? Anything he's doing differently, or is it just on a bigger stage more people are finally saying, this can actually work, bringing these freshmen in every single year?
I don't think anything's changed other than he's at a more high-profile school, and he's got more to sell now. At Memphis, he was still sort of on the, quote, other side of the fence, sort of fighting a lot of, it's the University of Memphis. It's not, which is, listen, it's my hometown university. It's a very good basketball program, but it's not the University of Kentucky. The Memphis fans are obsessed and diehards, but it's not like the Kentucky fan base. It's not as big as the Kentucky fan base. FedEx Forum is nice, but it's not as big as Rupp Arena. The Memphis campus is fine, but it's not like the campus in Lexington. Conference USA is fine, but it's not the SEC. The Nike affiliation with Memphis is fine, but it's not like the Nike affiliation with Kentucky. So I think what you've seen with John is that he could get players wherever he coached. If he coached at Tulane, then Derrick Rose would have played at Tulane. That's the way this was always going to go. But when you combine the presence of John and the power of John Calipari with the history, tradition, and all the other things that go into it with Kentucky, you get a monster. And I don't think anybody who paid attention to what John was capable of doing in Memphis should be surprised by what he's doing now at Kentucky. I tweeted about this on the day the Harrison twins were going to commit, and it's 100% true. I was talking to a couple of different coaches told me this, but one in particular is somebody who, I don't want to name him, but if I told you his name, you would call him one of the top 10 coaches in America right now, at one of the top 10 programs in America right now. And he said, I hope Cal gets the Harrison twins. And I said, why? He said, because then that'll help us with the other guys, because we can't beat them. If fill those two spots. Those are two guys. That's two spots he doesn't have to fill with some of the guys we're actually recruiting. And what I took from that is, A, it's true, but B, this is a guy who be on top of the world, and yet he's conceding recruits to another man in another university. That's how big of a deal John and Kentucky are right now, and there's no evidence that it's going to go away. The recruits are going to continue to go, and why wouldn't they?
Is there any comparison to what Cal's doing recruiting-wise or on the court, I guess? What's the closest thing, looking back the past 20, 30 years, whatever, that you say is the closest to what Cal's doing right now?
I don't think there's anything close in the past 20 or 30 years. I mean, maybe when Krzyzewski had it going and they could kind of handpick some guys at Duke. But even then, they weren't putting together classes like this. I mean, they were still getting Duke-type guys. The very best, they'd handpick them, but it wasn't just, okay, who's the best point guard in the country? Boom, take him. Who's the best shooting guard? Take him. Who's the best power forward? All right, cool. put him in there too. They weren't doing like that's what John's doing now. I mean, the only thing that I think could possibly be comparable would be, what John Wooden was able to do at UCLA for a variety of reasons. If you research it, they were able to, that's it. I mean, nobody's been able to do what he's doing right now. And, I know when he was doing this on a smaller level at Memphis, the Memphis fans, I commented on the day that John left for Kentucky that the past 4 years in Memphis were the best 4 years Memphis has ever had, and it is the best 4 years Memphis is ever going to have. Clearly, Memphis doesn't have the history that Kentucky has, but I suspect when this is all over, with all due respect to the tradition and understanding that times have changed, the run that Kentucky's going to enjoy under John Calipari is going to overshadow almost anything else. Because, again, once upon a time, 60s, maybe even 70s, there were only a handful of schools competing for the best players. Now everybody competes for the best players, and nobody's ever able to collect them anywhere close to the way that John's able to collect them right now.
And one of those freshmen this year, one of the best players is Nerlens Noel. There was a report yesterday that he still hasn't been cleared. Should Kentucky fans be worried about his eligibility this season, or do you think this is something that ultimately will be resolved?
I think it will ultimately be resolved, but I would still be worried. I mean, we have seen examples of high school players, high-profile players being shut down for the year. Renardo Sidney being an obvious example. We've seen examples of high-profile recruits being sit down for 9 games. That's Josh Selby at Kansas a few years ago. Shabazz Muhammad is in a similar boat now. Listen, I don't think anybody can honestly tell you at this point that they know something improper went down. I don't want to say with the recruitment of Nerlens Noel, because that's not necessarily what this is about. With Josh Selby, some things went down with him, but they didn't go down with Kansas and him. It was agent stuff and, improper benefits so that maybe people would have a leg up on trying to represent Josh when he got to the NBA. It had, at least publicly, it had nothing to do with Kansas's recruitment of Selby. I think this might be similar, where if there were some things that went on with Nerlens' amateur career, that they might not have had anything to do necessarily with John Calipari or Kentucky boosters or whoever you want to throw into this big barrel of people who can maybe get their hands dirty. But still, if your amateur status has been compromised in any way, you've got problems. And again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know something wild went down somewhere along the lines with Nerlens Noel, but I can tell you this. There's a whole lot of red flags around this kid's recruitment and around the last 2 years he spent before he enrolled at Kentucky. That doesn't always mean anything, because I can sit here and tell you stories for the next hour about kids whose amateur status was compromised, and yet the NCAA just could not prove it, pin it, whatever. That might be the case here too. Let me be very clear. Also could be squeaky clean, nothing happened at all. We'll see. But if you're asking me if Kentucky fans should be nervous on some level, yeah, it's October 11th and the kid's not cleared. That's not normal.
All right, Gary Parrish, CBSSports.com. Thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to maybe talking with you throughout the season.
Anytime, guys. Enjoy the season.
Thank you.